Works. Okay. We can go on, I think. We can go on now.
Just asking us questions, or what's the...
I think we're just presenting, just to introduce ourselves as a CMC. And I'll be asking you questions. Yeah, I'll be asking you questions.
Okay, that's what I
Just
want.
about the history and,
Okay.
where you see the CMC, going, and European participation in the CMC, the ministerial, just various, kind of just storytelling.
Okay.
Yeah? Is that okay? Yeah? Okay.
Okay, I'm coming. That's really interesting. Stuff I've gone to.
It feels authentic.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Yeah. I gotta get Brad his mic.
Do you want to sit in the middle?
We could, yeah. Okay, sure.
I don't think you need that headset.
No.
Yeah.
Hello. Testing. Okay.
Rat.
It works?
It's up to...
Yes.
He's asking
I
whether...
think Adam is taking pictures. Thank you very much.
We need to wear these, apparently.
Well, I moderated here. I can hear you guys.
Oh, you can hear?
Yes, because you're not going to whisper. So we'll be able to hear each other.
Okay.
Okay.
Fine. Just want to test it. Okay.
So, is
It's good. So you guys have to wear this. Yeah.
there only like this one person who's not...
From EIB? I think it's this one, this one. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Oh,
Can you hear us? Okay, we do need to wear this.
yeah.
They...
Hello, everyone. Everyone is on the headphones. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Nora Alamer. I'm the coordinator for the Carbon Management Challenge. We're really happy to have you all today as an introduction to the Carbon Management Challenge. I have a great couple of panelists with me today. We have Brad Crabtree, the Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Department of Energy, and Lee Beck, Senior Director at the Clean Air Task Force. And we're here just to talk about the Carbon Management Challenge, what it is, where it came from, and what opportunity it has in Europe and the European Investment Bank in specific. So just about the Carbon Management Challenge, it's a global call to action to drive the adoption of carbon management technologies, advancing a pipeline of projects by 2030 that, when fully operational, will reach 1 gigaton of CO2 captured and stored annually. So this is the first high-level and visible global carbon management initiative aligned with the Paris Agreement. It builds on the existing strong collaboration through the MICDR and SEM-CCUS initiative, among other international initiatives. And it really promotes collaboration and knowledge sharing between governments as well as industry and NGOs. CMC participants come from all around the world. We have 22 countries plus the European Commission, and we're looking to add many, many more. So just to also mention that the Carbon Management Challenge, it's governed by the seven different major regions, and we have participants from each of those regions that sort of represent that region. So for the US, it's for North America. We have Brazil for Latin America, the UK for Europe, Kenya for Africa, Japan for Southeast Asia, and Saudi Arabia for the Middle East. So this is how we govern the Carbon Management Challenge and how we sort of make key decisions and move in that sort of direction. So CMC is delivered through 3 key work streams. Work stream 1 is developing country project finance. This looks to collaborate to advance existing and new financial policies to enable developing countries to support carbon management deployment. The co-leads for this are Kenya, Indonesia, and the US. For Workstream 2, there's project deployment and project tracking. It supports and tracks the scale-up of carbon management projects towards the gigaton goal by 2030 in coordination with existing efforts. The lead there is Brazil. And finally, Workstream 3, strategic communication and engagement. We're looking to carry the message that carbon management, in addition to other essential mitigation pathways, is integral to keeping the goal of limiting warming to 1.5. The co-leads there are Saudi Arabia and the UK, which was just announced in the ministerial on Friday. The workstream focus areas for Workstream 1 is developing country project finance. This looks to support, so what happened this year is we decided on what are the key focus areas that we could do as part of this collective of countries to really achieve those goals of the Carbon Management Challenge. So we have a few different points that we're looking at and focusing on over the next year. So for developing country project finance, this includes supporting opportunities within the UNFCCC framework to encourage climate finance through carbon management projects. This includes the Green Climate Fund. We had Trinidad and Tobago that accessed financing, being the first CCS-related project that got approved on that level. So we're looking to add more countries into that mix. We also are looking to assess developing country participants within the Carbon Management Challenge, their readiness based on their needs and based on key criteria for deployment. That will then help us when we explore funding arrangements to provide fit-for-purpose financing and resources and know where exactly which aspects in those developing countries to really put in that financing and that investment, whether it's storage capacity, technical capacity, all the different kind of points of that value chain. Workstream 2, project deployment and project tracking. We're looking to use existing efforts today. So various, for example, the Global CCS Institute, the International Energy Agency, they all already sort of track carbon management projects worldwide, but we're looking to add some value there and initiate a global CO2 storage tracking tool that really goes towards that gigaton goal. We're also looking to populate a global public policy knowledge sharing repository on the CMC website. There's a lot of policies happening already worldwide, and really how to bring all those strings together under one umbrella to benefit each of the different countries, to really streamline that process towards creating more deployment and more acceleration of carbon management projects. We're also looking to initiate a study to track and address gaps in the 2030 critical path commercial demonstration of carbon management by the industrial sector. So really bringing that business case to the forefront. And then Workstream 3, strategic communications and engagement. We're looking to really establish that CMC brand identity. We have key messages, and we've just launched a website and a LinkedIn page, and we're really looking for that stakeholder engagement and really bringing us and weaving the Carbon Management Challenge into the global conversation towards mitigation. We're also now, as I said, we have our website, and that's where we look to be that sort of main pinpoint of communication. And then we're also looking to elevate the CMC on the international stage. We've so far hosted 2 ministerials at COP, one last year and one this year, all at a high level, and so we're looking to continue that momentum. So here's just the website and the LinkedIn page. Please go on the website. It's carbonmanagementchallenge.org, and the LinkedIn page, of course, is where we can engage and talk on the different threads and everything like that. So just to familiarize everyone with the Carbon Management Challenge, I have my fantastic speakers here. So we have Brad Crabtree from the Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management. He's Assistant Secretary there from the U.S. Department of Energy. We have Lee Beck, the Senior Director from the Clean Air Task Force. So we'll just have a very casual conversation just to find out more about the inception and progress and potential and possibility of the Carbon Management Challenge. So I'll just turn to Brad. Brad, so you were there with the Carbon Management Challenge from the beginning. Could you tell us how that came to be and where you see the carbon management going from now onwards?
Absolutely. So President Biden announced the Carbon Management Challenge in April of last year. And the purpose was to elevate carbon management on a global scale as one of the critical pathways for achieving net zero emissions. At the last COP, Noura mentioned that we had a ministerial, and that ministerial was framed as carbon management being one of 4 key pillars to help us keep the 1.5 degree goal in reach. Those pillars are tripling renewables, ending deforestation, net deforestation, reducing methane and other non-CO2 greenhouse gas emissions, and last but not least, economy-wide deployment of carbon management, for power generation industry, and ultimately removing CO2 directly from the atmosphere. And the purpose of the Carbon Management Challenge is, as Noura mentioned, to align the participating countries around a goal of having 1 gigaton of carbon capture and storage capacity worldwide in the form of projects in development by 2030. And the International Energy Agency has done analysis suggesting that that's the level of deployment that will be necessary if we're to be on track both to meet the 1.5 degree goal, but also to achieve the contribution that modeling suggests is necessary to come from carbon management to achieve our climate goals. And so that is the aspirational goal that the countries that have joined the Carbon Management Challenge are promoting. And I guess I would also just note that this is very much a global effort. We have some of the world's largest oil and gas producing countries. We have some of the most largest renewable energy producers. We have industrialized countries, developing countries. Noura mentioned every region of the world is represented by participating countries. So it's a really extraordinary diversity of nations that have joined together. Now 22, right, Noura? Plus the European Commission.
Yes, that's right. So maybe turning to Lee here, it's a good segue to just talking a bit about Europe and what this potential is for Europe. So if we turn to, the map, we can see the European Commission is involved. We also have Denmark, the Netherlands, Romania, Sweden, the UK, Norway. How do you see the potential there for Europe based on developments and how the Carbon Management Challenge can really streamline those efforts?
Yeah, thank you, Noura. And it's an honor to be here. I do want to say thanks to the EIB Benelux Pavilion for giving us this stage to talk about such an important topic. And congratulations to you on launching the Carbon Management Challenge, having a wonderful follow-up ministerial from last year. And I mean, these slides are amazing. So I'm really, really excited about how this CMC will grow under your leadership. I'm Lee Beck with the Clean Air Task Force. We're a global climate organization focused on overlooked solutions that includes carbon capture. But we also work on a range of other technologies, climate as an infrastructure problem, hydrogen, nuclear energy, methane mitigation. And I think when it comes to Europe, and we're actually active in the US, Europe, Middle East, Africa, on all these technologies. But I think for what we've seen in Europe was really an unparalleled catch-up when it comes to carbon management technologies. 4 years ago, when we worked to expand the Clean Air Task Force to Europe, to Brussels as a first step, we couldn't actually even say CCS in the Brussels context. And now there is an industrial carbon management strategy that was launched on the EU level this year, clarifying the policy needs across the bloc. Member states have had their own carbon management strategies. We're seeing Germany looking to overturn and change their CCS law, which outlawed storage and now actually gives an opportunity for member states to Länder, to have CO2 onshore storage, Central and Eastern Europe, Southern Europe. So I think first of all, I just want to clarify that Europe has really gone ahead with a lot of supportive government policy, but it actually follows a lot of private sector interest. The private sector had dozens of CCS projects underway by the early 2020, 2021, and really caught policymakers napping. And so I think the opportunity here is that some of these projects have received FID. Some of them are even in operation. So we're looking at Norway as the first ever cement facility at scale with carbon management technologies. The Port of Rotterdam went ahead with really supportive government intervention to allocate risk as the project was facing permitting challenges. And we're expecting more FIDs in the UK, which historically has been pretty supportive of CCS. By the end of this year. So what I'm seeing is just unprecedented speed at achieving scale. And the EU actually has, thanks to the Net Zero Industry Act, an official CO2 storage target at 50 million tons by 2030. It's also really working to understand some of the challenges of the projects to really create a supportive environment. And also has provided funding for large-scale facilities across the bloc in multiple rounds, where CCS is actually competing as part of the Innovation Fund against other clean energy technologies, and it's consistently recognized as one of the best way to decarbonize hard-to-abate industries. So I'll stop here. I think there's more to be done on the European level for sure. This includes figuring out how we can really deliver an efficient CO2 transport and storage infrastructure across Europe that allows us to reduce cost. It's cheaper to have onshore storage than to ship everything to the North Sea, which is right now actually the plan, and we could actually cut costs over half if we really strategically develop CO2 storage and CO2 infrastructure. There is regulatory challenges. So because the UK left the EU, we can't just have our CO2 from the EU go to the UK. So that has to be ironed out because the UK has almost 24 storage exploration licenses underway versus other countries like Denmark. It's just a handful. So we're expecting a lot of CO2 storage development in the UK. And then in overall just cross-border planning and government capacity. So I think very promising environment, lots of projects underway, but more needs to be done.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you for that overview. Maybe just turning to the work streams and how we can try and achieve what's needed and fill those gaps. Turning to you, Brad, you were very much part of the, formalizing these work streams. Can you give us a bit more about how these came to be and what was the thinking behind sort of those three work streams and how they're laid out?
Yeah, well, in particular, one of the things that hasn't been mentioned that I think is unusual about the Carbon Management Challenge is the developing countries joined industrialized countries in the announcement of the initiative. Brazil and Indonesia were co-sponsors of the effort from the start. And there are now a number of developing countries across 3 continents that are participating. And for the developing countries in particular, project finance and the development of financing mechanisms was a top priority, really an important a prerequisite for them to participate at all. And so that's why it's a work stream that's focused on developing country project finance. These projects are hard to finance even in Europe and North America, but it's especially challenging in the developing world. So that's a top priority. And then in terms of project deployment and project tracking, as Nora had mentioned, there's a number of organizations that are tracking the deployment of carbon capture and storage. We especially want to make sure that as we aim towards this 1 gigaton by 2030 goal, that we're seeing real deployment in projects that are moving to that goal. So the tracking part is important, but we also want to make sure that technologies are demonstrated across industries within this decade. So there's also an effort that will be underway to make sure that by 2030 in all the major industries where carbon capture and storage is necessary for decarbonization. We're seeing commercial scale projects coming online around the world. And then on strategic communication and engagement, there's still not a lot of understanding about carbon management, various appreciation of its necessity in meeting our climate goals. So we have a real focus on the communication side as well.
Thank you, Brad. I think I saw Lee respond, so I think you have something to add to that.
Yeah, I do just want to say something about the use of financing, because actually a week ago we had a conversation here on this stage on financing. And when we talk about financing, we'll always talk up here. But for these projects, what I think is really, really important to recognize that most of them right now that have gone ahead are either balance sheet finance from big companies, oil and gas, tech, or they're driven mostly by government incentives, which suggests that the business case is really established through policy. And I think that keeps me up at night because, as Brad said, we want to see a range of projects go ahead. But how do we go from the successful projects that are going ahead right now to kind of long-term many projects where we're actually seeing an evolution of the financing and can actually go out in the capital markets to raise money sustainably for these projects. And I think that is something that still has to evolve. But I just wanted to mention this as we're diving a lot into the data of how what really makes climate infrastructure projects come to fruition, come to FID.
Thank you, Lee. And I think we can spend the last 5 or so minutes taking questions from the audience. That sort of sums up the general overview of what the Carbon Management Challenge is, what it can offer. But please, if there's anyone in the audience.
Hi, thank you for the great presentation and for introducing the CMC. This is Shrey Goel from Green Spider AI, Paris. Well, to put it delicately, what is the future of America's participation in CMC come January?
Actually, I don't think it needs to be put delicately. There's actually, this is one of the, sorry, I have to take this off because this is one of the less challenging areas politically, I think, in the United States. The whole history of developing legislation for carbon capture and storage and carbon dioxide removal has had support from both the Democratic and Republican parties. The tax credits that we have in the United States have strong Republican support for carbon capture and storage, also the investments in our infrastructure legislation. So obviously the new administration has not come into office yet, but I fully expect that they will continue to participate in the effort. We've been talking to companies here at the COP, American companies, and they very much want the United States to remain engaged internationally on this topic as well as domestically.
To follow up on that question, Tal from Carbon Blue. Yeah, so to follow up on that question, Tal from Carbon Blue, we're a CDR company. We actually have a first phase project with you, and 45Q I think is a catalytic set of incentives all around the world. And when you are saying that it would not change, do you mean specifically 45Q and the benefits, or is it even wider than that?
So, great question. So, I do think that of the whole suite of tax credits that were in our Inflation Reduction Act, 45Q is one of the tax credits that was enhanced in a significant way, as you know, and available for projects beginning construction through 2032. I anticipate that Republicans in Congress will maintain that tax credit as is, potentially even improve it, but most likely keep it as is. I think it's an open question whether there will be additional federal funding for example, not only do we have the 45Q tax credit, but you work in the carbon dioxide removal field. As you know, we have our direct air capture hubs program, that whether there'll be additional funding where we're actually able to invest with industry in commercial demonstration, I think that's a question. But it's probably more of a budgetary question than it is a political one. My sense is that even with carbon dioxide removal, there's strong Republican support, maybe less so than for traditional carbon capture, but still support.
And I just want to add something which is tangentially related, but the CMC, and you've seen the work stream and the structure, it's really set up to be a broadly participatory effort. So even if there is a case where a government in the future may step back or not be as involved, I think CMC would still greatly benefit to hear from stakeholders, project developers like yourself, to learn about what's really the reality and share that knowledge in any case. So I think there's a broad invitation to continue to engage and be present from everyone.
Maybe one more thing I would say, I don't want to focus only on the United States, because obviously this is a global effort, but carbon dioxide removal is actually one area where there's a lot of U.S. technology leadership, and that will have appeal to the incoming administration in terms of continued support for the technology.
Thank you. If there's any more questions? Yes.
On, but I don't know if I won't be able to hear the answer, I suppose, without them. But can you hear me? Thank you. Nikki Reich with the Center for International Environmental Law. So I wanted to ask two questions. One pertaining to the track record of carbon capture and storage and direct air capture to date, and the science on the role that it can or can't play in the urgent need to curb greenhouse gas emissions this decade, and also on the finance, because it's a finance COP, right? So on the first, I mean, don't take it from me, but take it from the IPCC in calling carbon capture one of the most expensive, least effective technologies for reducing emissions this decade by 2030. IPCC mitigation report, SPM figure 7, I think it was. So that's clear in both the energy and the industry sector, that we've also seen this technology exist for over 50 years, and maybe its effectiveness is a drop in the bucket, repeated reports about that. So I'd love to hear how you think throwing more money into this technology that hasn't delivered and can't scale or deliver on those reductions in the near term is a good use of scarce finances.
I can speak to that. First of all, you're wrong in the argument that substantial resources have been devoted to carbon capture and storage. In the United States and globally, of the key technologies that are needed to get to net zero, it has received, up until now, the least investment of any of the technologies. The IEA did a study not too long ago showing that it was just a fraction of 1% of total investment in clean energy technologies went into carbon capture and storage. I would use the example of the stimulus legislation in the United States following the financial crisis. There was about $3 billion invested in carbon capture and storage, and tens of billions into other technologies. And that was the first investment, and that was a decade ago. It's only with our infrastructure legislation in the updates to the 45Q tax credit that there has been significant, even meaningful policy support for carbon capture and storage. So the 18 projects that we have in the United States today that are operating at commercial scale across multiple industries were accomplished mostly with little or no public policy support. Only the most recent demonstration projects had policy support. As to performance, actually, given the number of projects in the world today, the actual performance compared to other energy technologies and the levels of investment is quite good. I started off my career as a wind energy advocate, and wind energy is one of the most cost-effective, reliable generation technologies today, but the first commercial wind energy projects had poor performance and very high costs. If you compare carbon capture to technologies in that regard, and the performance in the development cycle, it's actually quite good. As far as actual costs on a per ton basis, the costs of mitigation in carbon are mostly under $100 a ton. Only with heavy industry do you start to get over $100 a ton, and if you look at the costs of decarbonization, as we decarbonize, the cost of each additional ton that we abate or remove is going to get higher and higher and higher, and that includes renewables as well, because the more renewables we have to have dispatchable firm power generation, and so early renewable power is inexpensive, but the more you're decarbonizing the system, the more expensive it gets, because you have to provide firm dispatchable zero carbon resources. So the argument that carbon capture and storage is unaffordable is just not accurate, because as we decarbonize, the cost per ton will go up. And actually carbon capture is quite cost effective when you look across the various technologies that are necessary to get us to zero emissions or near zero emissions. They're on a spectrum of costs, and carbon capture and storage is on a spectrum of costs as well. So if you're capturing CO2 from things like natural gas processing, hydrogen production, ethanol production, different technologies like that, those costs can be as low or lower on a per ton basis than renewables. However, you're talking about direct air capture, sustainable aviation fuels. And so I just think that kind of assessment that you provided just doesn't hold up across technologies.
Yeah, and I just want to add to this. I can't actually see you, but I want to agree with you that what we want to see in terms of climate technology deployment, we want to see that it can be done on time, on budget, and efficiently, and with the support of local communities, right? I think that is really, really important to state. And then I do want to say that this carbon capture discussion, it's needed, it's not needed. This is there's no nuance in this conversation. And what we're looking for in the climate conversation, where we're looking at close to 200 countries to decarbonize that have very different political, economic, natural resource, and individual circumstances, we have to have a suite of options that they can choose and pick from. And so I think, number one, it's really important that we make sure carbon capture is available as an option for those countries that want to use it. Number two, I think there are actually industries that you can't abate without carbon capture and storage, such as cement production, for example, right? So I think alone for this industry alone, it makes sense to commercialize carbon management technologies. And then I think Brad did a really good job on the cost side, but we're looking at overall systems cost, right? I think it's really time for climate analysts to not compare apples to oranges, but apples to apples. How can we create a least cost system for decarbonization? In the power sector, models show repeatedly 100% renewables, for example, is not the cheapest way. It's actually a mix of different technologies that we want to see. And then finally, I do want to say something about this notion that when governments invest in innovation, in trying out technologies, in pilots, in demos, that somehow if the first project isn't perfect, that is a waste of money. No, governments have to invest so we can learn. And it's really, really important that technologies advance. And as Brad said, actually, a lot of these technologies were developed by the private sector. But we need to learn so we can actually improve the future. We need to create new technologies and invest in innovation. I think what's really important to make sure that governments do is, do they go to the places where projects didn't work out as they expected and harvest the learning and turn that back into policy learning. And I would say in the European Union example, the first projects didn't go ahead, but the EU did a really, really good job improving their policies and learning from this. And I think we will in the future have to do much more policy learning based on the experience that happens on the ground. Because in the end, climate is an infrastructure problem. Climate action will only deliver if we can get steel in the ground. The emissions reductions will be achieved through infrastructure and not through policy passage.
Thank you, Lee. We are over time. Thank you, everyone, for joining this discussion. Carbonmanagementchallenge.org. Please get in touch, and we're more than happy to engage with all stakeholders and governments. So thank you all, and have a lovely day.
Thanks, Nora.